Hi, I'm Joshua Kemble, and this is vlog 36. This is the vlog where I talk about quarterly stories and the process of creating it. Quarterly Stories is an ongoing graphic novel that's about faith and mental illness. It's a very personal story to me that I hand write, hand letter, and hand ink. So far I've penciled page 32 and inked the first two panels, and I call them panels. That's just sort of a trick for myself. This is actually a panelless page because it deals with someone having a panic attack. So the way that I've set up the layout is a little more flowy, a little more psychedelic. The imagery is a little more metaphorical rather than literal. So anyhow, the part of this page that I'm going to attack next is what I'm going to call panel 3, but it's basically the third section where I have to ink a portrait of a woman. So what I'm going to do during this clip is talk a little over it, just to explain a little bit of my process for those of you who might be new to comics, or those of you who are into comics but would like to know a little bit more about my process and how I work when I'm inking. It's a time-lapse video, so trust me, I wish I worked this fast, but I don't. So I hope you guys enjoy it and find it informative. Thanks to those of you who have commented, liked, shared, and most of all, subscribed to my vlog. It really means a lot. It helps me keep going at this, and it also helps me kind of garner some feedback as to whether, you know, these vlogs that I've been doing are really getting to anyone, whether people are really interested in it and interested in the material. After the vlog, if you have any comments or ideas or suggestions or just thoughts on the video, please post them below in the comments section. And if you can, just hit that nice little subscribe button right down there, right there. Yeah, feels good. So enough talking, let's get to some action and to me inking some comics. So in the previous vlog, 35 and 34, you can watch me ink those other two panels. And right here, you can also see the underlying pencils, which have already been placed in. I'm inking directly over it. And as I've explained before, I really like to get my contours down before I get into shading. So what I do is basically like the outline of the entire character before I get into heavy rendering. And my reasoning for this is because you can end up getting lost and lose a lot of detail, and possibly actually lose some of the form if you don't get that initial line weight right. So if your lines and your contour lines are correct, then all of the shading and stuff following becomes like icing on the cake. So I'm using a micron at a 1 and a 3, and basically for thinner details I'm using the 1, and then for the 3 for the thicker contour lines. And as you'll see, I'm also doing a little bit of the last panel, and part of why I'm doing the line work for that is because the way I've designed the page, since it deals with a pretty heavy emotional topic like having panic attacks, I thought it would be nice to juxtapose kind of the horror of that kind of moment with a really flowy, almost pretty page. And so on this page, the hair and this kind of smoke, which you're going to see recurring in this chapter, where I'm using smoke as like a theme for mental illness, is going to be flowing throughout the pages. Right here, what I'm using is a Pentel pocket brush pen, and then I'm hatching at pretty much 45-degree angles to create depth and shading. In the hatching process, I use the Pentel Pocket brush pen pretty much exclusively, and I've explained that in previous podcasts, but just in case this is your first time, I'll explain why I like using it. The only other real tool I'd use would be a Series 7 Winsor Newton, and one of the things I like is really simplifying my work so that there's less time cleaning and more time drawing. And so one of the things I like about the Pentel Pocket brush pen is that it's equally refillable, and if the tip gets totally fudged, it's disposable. And it's also relatively affordable, and the handle on the brush I actually have gotten so used to that I can get like a really fine hatch mark or a really thick hatch mark, and I can do a lot of feathering, which is one of my favorite techniques to use. So here I'm working on the hair. I've already gone through the face. And as you'll see, the shading process actually seems to sometimes take less time than doing the contour lines. And once again, I want this to be a really rendered, pretty page, and part of that is to just juxtapose with the kind of harshness of the beginning of the chapter. And so a lot of this chapter is going to have to do with mental illness and get kind of heavily into how that affects relationships and how that affects people and how our own perceptions of it can kind of skew with other people. And I really want to reiterate that I'm not trying to be all heady with talking about the theme of the story. I'm actually bringing it up because it tends to, the themes of your stories as a cartoonist, especially a cartoonist who is an author and illustrator of your own comics, the theme really should affect and inform your layout. Everything you're doing as a cartoonist is in service to story, and even on rendery pages like this, you want to make sure your layout and every single panel is kind of reinforcing the feeling that you want the reader to come away with when they're reading your story. So anyhow, here I'm doing some fabric, and fabric's really fun to render. It has these really elegant shadows, and usually they're a lot more subtle and less harsh than like a shadow on a face. And so one of the things that's really fun to do is rendering folds. And here I'm rendering some of the smoke that's also air, and that area is going to be interesting because it's also transitioning into the hair. So we're approaching the final page, and whenever I am doing voiceovers over these time lapses, I'm a little envious of the time it takes. Thanks for those of you who've watched, and please like and comment and share, and most of all, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're enjoying these process videos. It really helps me continue to do this and also helps get the word out for quarterly stories. Thanks, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Just hit that nice little subscribe button right down there. Right there? Yeah, feels good.